Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Eric with SweetSpotDFS, and welcome to a DFS preview of the 2022 AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. In this video, I'm going to cover everything you're going to need to know in order to build the optimal lineup, which is going to include looking at past optimal lineups and then diving into the bucket system. Because if we don't hit the optimal lineup, maybe we'll miss and win a GPP instead. Wouldn't that be nice? Of course, we're going to be looking at tournament information as well as all the golf courses, but before we get into all that, let's go over some giveaways. The very first one we'll be looking at is the subscriber giveaway. If you want a free entry into this giveaway, all you need to do is be subscribed and comment below. The topic this week can be, who is your favorite 10K golfer? Just like the past several weeks, I think we're going to need one in order to either hit the optimal lineup or win a GPP. So give me your favorite 10K golfer. And then if we hit the goal of 185 subscribers by the end of the week, I'm going to run this giveaway. If not, all your entries for this giveaway will be moved into the next week's giveaway. So nothing lost. So I encourage you guys to participate. We just ran this yesterday. We had a winner, Shot Like Harden, won $20. So if you want a chance to win $10, all you got to do, be subscribed and comment below. We also run another giveaway, which is called the Prize Picks giveaway. And all you need to do with this one is sign up with Prize Picks using the promo code SweetSpot and put $20 into your account. You'll automatically be entered into this giveaway. And the best thing about it, your name's never going to get removed from any of the giveaways that I do on Prize Picks until your name is called. So if you don't win this week, you might win next week. You might win the week after that. And all you gotta do is put $20 into your account. That's it. Also, Prize Picks is going to match your deposit up to $100. So if you put $20 in, boom, it gets doubled to $40. You win this giveaway. You're playing Prize Picks for free with $40 in your account. And Prize Picks is kind of simple to play. I mean, I've won quite a bit of money on Prize Picks. So if you're not playing yet and you're in a state that allows it, you're kind of missing out. I have a link in the description that'll get you straight there with the promo code already populated. Super simple. Encourage you to do that. All right, let's go ahead and get into this tournament. Let me throw the tournament information up. So we're at AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. It was established. This tournament has been played since 1937. That's insane. It's a very, very long time here at Pebble Beach, California. I can't remember when all the golf courses, because I think there was actually more golf courses in this rotation. We're obviously on the 3 that you can see on the screen we'll talk about shortly, but I think they actually played with different golf courses. That's not that important, but just know this has been played since 1937, which is kind of crazy. Field size is 156 players. The cut is top 65 in ties, but it's after 54 holes as opposed to 36. There is a 3-course rotation. That's why it's 54, because each golfer will play those courses before the cut's made. Your average winning score here is -18, which if you look at the weather and the wind, I mean, the weather's kind of cold, but there's barely any wind throughout all 3 days, by the way. So I think our scoring conditions are about -20. I think -20 is going to win this tournament. And why is that important to you guys? Well, there are certain golfers that can put on the birdies. They can continue to score and score really well. You'd probably want your streaky golfers that make a lot of birdies at times and then don't. Whereas there are other golfers who really just do well when the winning score is closer to par. And in my opinion, that's your Jason Days of the world. Now, Jason Day does have a good course history here, and we'll talk about him a little bit later. But when it's a scoring fest, I just don't trust Jason Day as much as I would if everyone's trying to struggle to get par. Now, your average cut score is -2. I probably see that this year, maybe -3 or -4. I think the lowest the cut's ever been was -5. I can't remember if that's 2017 or 2016, but that is definitely in play, I think, this week. And like I said about the weather, you can see that there. Strength of field's 209. That's without any withdrawals. So if there are withdrawals, it might go down. It would have to be one of the top guys because this is a pretty weak strength of field. The golf courses are Pebble Beach Golf Links, Spyglass Hill Golf Course, and Monterey Peninsula Country Club. These 3 courses have been played quite frequently over, well, since I've been collecting data since 2013, these have been the 3 golf courses they've used. Last year, they only did 2 courses, so keep that in mind when you're doing your research. I think it was Pebble Beach and Spyglass Hill. They didn't play on Monterey last year. So make sure if you do look at these courses, your understanding of it. Last year, they didn't play that one. Because of COVID, there's no fans, there's no Pro-Am. So they just made a 36-hole cut, which was pretty nice. Now, the pars for those courses, actually all the information you see on the screen starts with Pebble, then goes to Spyglass, and then goes to Monterey. So we got a par 72 at both Pebble Beach and Spyglass, par 71 at Monterey. Yardages are as follows on the screen: 6,972 for Pebble, 7,041 Spyglass, and 6,957 for Monterey. And for the most part, I mean, all the greens are POA. They just say POA-ana. There's no strain. POA-ana is a strain, but it's kind of a general type of POA grass. Some fairways are straight ryegrass. Some are a mix of rye and bent. And I don't remember if there's actually one that's just bent, but I think there is. I don't think it really matters. Fairways are more of your approaches and maybe you're around the green stats. And then your rough is ryegrass throughout the entire 3 golf courses. It's a pretty good grass for all parts of the world. So, and then I do have shot shapes that are required at each course. Again, it starts with Pebble, then goes to Spyglass, and then Monterey. So I'll move my head and you can see Monterey's shot shape chart, if you want to call it that. As you can see, there really isn't much need for shaping shots, but Pebble actually offers probably the most opportunities for shaping shots. And a lot of it's just because of where tee shots need to be and how the shape of the green is located. There's 2 holes where trees kind of dictate shot shapes off the tee, but other than that, it's pretty wide open and you can hit whatever shot you want. So I don't think you're going to get much of an edge looking at that information. So from here, what I want to do is get into past optimal lineups. So let's go ahead and put up the screen. And we're going to start with 2018. So all the little black tick marks here are your optimal lineup in 2018. It started with Ted Potter Jr. It skips Dustin at 11,000, and then it goes to Jason Day at 10,900, Phil Mickelson at 9K, Ches Reavie at 8, Streelman at 7, and Scott Stallings at 6. If you take a look, this is kind of your typical traditional build. 10-9-8, 7-7-6. And I feel like we're probably going to see a lot of that. So in 2019, what we have for our optimal was actually 2 9Ks and a 10K golfer. So now we're like really stars and scrubs. And then we dropped to a 7 and 2 6K golfers. So that is an extremely interesting build. You don't really see this that often, but I think maybe at this tournament, we're going to see it more often. And honestly, you're going to see a lot of 10Ks in that optimal lineup as well as 7Ks. So in 2020, you had a 10K, a 9K, and all 7s. So we're kind of seeing you on a 10 and a 9 and then going to 7s. And this is just historical data. Don't get me wrong. This has no bearing on what this year is going to be. That's why we look into the buckets and look at the salary buckets to see what is the quality of golfer in each of those salary buckets. And that's how we'll determine whether or not you want a 10-9 or maybe you skip 10-9 and you go to 10-8. And we're going to find that out. So just because I'm saying it with past optimals doesn't make it like something you absolutely need to do. Stay with me to the bucket system and find out yourself there, because I do some pretty accurate projections, over 90% correct throughout the last full year. And then in 2021, we have a 10K, a 9K, 7, 7, 7, 7. So there you go again. A bunch of 7Ks mixed in with a 10 and a 9. Now, here's one interesting note. 11-3 Patrick Cantlay in 2021. In 2020, I guess we don't really have that high price guy that's up there. And we don't have it on 2019 either. 2018, however, Dustin Johnson 11-7. So don't be afraid to play the high price guy. Now, don't get me wrong. Cantlay was not in the optimal and he was not in the GPP winning lineup, which is highlighted by blue. But you could build a lineup with him with the golfers that are on here. You might not be able to go. Yeah, you can't go 11, 10. So you needed Berger and Berger alone. Well, actually, let's see here. Can we build a lineup that beats it? So 606.50. So we put Cantlay and McNeely together. Let's go ahead and put Spieth there as well. And probably need Nate Lashley. Probably need Charlie Hoffman and maybe Tom Hoagie. So these 6 golfers would score 643.5. Now, does that actually stay under the salary cap? It's $100 over. So no. Can we pivot from Hoagie? Nope. It had to be from Hoffman to Tom Lewis. So does this work as well? I think it will. 621, your GPP winning lineup was 606.5. So you can still get there with the most expensive golfer. Now, obviously here at SweetSpotDFS, we are always trying to get all 6 of our golfers inside the top 10. So Tom Hoagie wouldn't have been a golfer we would have chose. I mean, it wouldn't fit the sweet spot model. But yeah, you'd go 10, 7, 9, 7, 7, 3, 7, 8. Can we get there that way? Yeah, this is 49,600 because we left money on the table with the optimal lineup. So we could have done it there, which still would have included 4 7K golfers with the sweet spot optimal. So keep that in mind. From here, we're going to dive right into the bucket system. I'm not going to explain what all these buckets are. I'll probably leave most of that to the strategy video tomorrow, but we do have 6 stat categories that have buckets underneath them. So the first one we're going to talk about is the last year bucket. And this is just looking at last year's finishing place and trying to determine, is this a trend we want to follow? I have 6 ranges, 1 to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60 to 80, 80 plus, which is just missed cuts and withdraws. DQs also fit in there, and then did not plays. So we have basically everything covered. The ranges go by 20 points, 20 points between each of them. So as we read this, how many golfers? I mean, first of all, you can see the frequencies of these happening, but I'm more interested in the projections. The projections themselves take into account strength of field that's associated with that bucket, the success rate of how frequently they finish inside the top 10, not even frequently, how often do they finish inside the top 10. You also have a frequency rate up here, which basically counts how many times has this happened at least once, where we've had a golfer who top 20'd the year before inside the top 10. This is probably one of the strongest buckets that I have, is this bucket alone. If you were following anything on Twitter, one of the trends is the last 10 out of 13 winners have had a top 16 finish at this tournament. Well, I can go a little bit deeper. And when it comes to optimal lineups, you've had at least 3 golfers from this bucket, and that's an at least, so minimum 3 from this bucket inside the optimal dating back to 2017. Now, it's only 4 years of data, so that's probably not good enough, when it comes to optimal lineups. But if we're min-maxing our 10, top 10 frequencies, all right, you just need a minimum of 1, but we've seen a maximum of 7. So when we include everything, success rate, the amount of golfers that are in that bucket this year, and then obviously, I think I already said success rate, we're projecting somewhere between 2 to 4. Remember, you round down every single number in this bucket and you round up every single number in this bucket. So this is, or column, I should say, not bucket. So this is minimum of 2, maximum of 4. And there are tons of good golfers in this bucket. So if I go ahead and I put a filter on this and we look at all of our last year 2s, starts with Cantlay, goes to Berger, Spieth, Day, McNeely, Tringali. You've got a really good list of golfers here. Now, again, you want somewhere between 2 to 4. So take your pick. I'm not going to talk about the golfers I like right now. I'll do that in the strategy video. So if you want to see who I like in these ranges, stay in tune with that one. From there, the only other bucket to really consider are golfers who did not play the year before. And we're going to find out whether or not course history matters here shortly. Personally, if you watch the video that Joe Nicely and I did, I joined him on the turn. So if you haven't seen that video, I highly encourage you guys to go watch it. We talked a lot about course history, and it's going to matter. And it's not so much course history, it's event history, tournament history. You're going to want you're going to want to roster golfers who do have some event history. And again, we'll come to that when we get to the course history buckets. But when it comes to last year, not playing the year before, obviously this is a big bucket. Try to find golfers who do have course history. Now, that doesn't mean avoid all golfers with zero course history, because you're probably going to want one or two of those. Again, we'll talk about that in the course history one, but when it comes to did not plays, this is definitely a bucket that is worth rostering. And then there's really no other certain buckets from there. So even if you had a last year finish between 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60 to 80, or missed cut, really it's not showing itself to be a very viable bucket. Or buckets, I should say. The only one that's kind of safe is your missed cuts, and you want somewhere between 0 to 2. So in my opinion, this 0.82 just tells me there's an 18% chance we'll get 0 golfers from this bucket. So because 0.18 plus 8.2 or 0.82 will get you to 1, a flat 1. So keep that in mind. That's how I kind of look at everything when it comes to last year finishes. How about last week finishes? Your most recent form. Well, you would assume having good course or good recent form coming in here is a good thing, and it's not a bad thing. I mean, you have the highest success rate out of all the buckets from this one, but we're only projecting somewhere between 1 to 3, and kind of on the low end, you know, probably somewhere between 1 to 2 is what we're really thinking, but a max of 3. And that's because we only have 11 golfers in that bucket this year. I mean, we do have a 100% frequency rate, so the chances of we seeing just one golfer from this bucket, pretty good. So why don't we take a look and see who those guys are? These would be your last week 2s. So now we pull in some familiar faces. We've already talked about Daniel Berger and Jason Day, Cameron Tringali. Those 3 golfers were in the last year 2 buckets that we were just talking about. Does that mean they're a guarantee to finish inside the top 10? No, they're not. But it gives them a better chance of finishing inside the top 10. So if you're already thinking about anchoring some of your plays, maybe those 3 golfers I just mentioned should be on your radar. But you have a good list of golfers here. And remember, we want somewhere between 1 to 2. You can go up to 3, but there's probably a 90% failure rate of getting to 3. And that doesn't mean 100%. It's just highly unlikely. But 2 seems pretty very likely, and 1 is a definite lock. So here you go. It's a small list, 11 golfers. Pick your guy. Now, when we look at the other buckets, again, it's very similar to our last year buckets. These buckets in between, 20 to 40th place from last week, not very good. 40 to 60, not very good. 60, 80, not very good. You want somewhere between 0 to 1 in each of those buckets. Your number 1 bucket are golfers who did not play last week, and you want somewhere between 2 to 4 of those guys. Now we have 61 golfers in that bucket, so it's not even worth really looking at, because that's way too many. But a very high chance we're going to see at least 2, maybe up to 4 golfers inside the top 10 from that bucket. And then last week 3s, 80 plus, those are all your missed cuts or withdraws, somewhere between 1 to 3, and it's pretty healthy. You know, 2 seems very likely, but there's still a good chance of 3 and a pretty good chance of 1. So I know that's kind of weird to say things like that, but yeah, I mean, it's a high volume driven bucket. So 51 we have in the bucket this year. We usually see 36.7 or 36.8. Maybe we go on the low end. Maybe we just project 2. Like we just think 2 guys that missed the cut last week are going to finish inside the top 10. So again, take your pick. There are too many golfers to go over with that. So those were your last week buckets. Now we can get into our course history, which we were just talking about with last year buckets. So that did not play, a very low projection. We have 32 golfers. Now in that video with Joe Nicely, I had said there were 70 golfers. I had forgotten to update this field. The one that pulls, the sheet that this sheet pulls from, I should say. It was looking at, I think, the course history buckets, if I recall correctly, which that's That's why I had said what I said. But it doesn't matter. Anyways, not having course history, not a very good look. And when it comes to the strength of field from this bucket, the success rate, the projection is pretty low, 0 to 2. There's probably a high likelihood we see 1, but we have a lot of rookie golfers that are really good in this bucket. If there was one bucket that might fail, it's this one. I could see up to 3 golfers finishing inside the top 10 from this bucket. So keep that in mind. Just because of how good those rookies are, it's not going to show up in the strength of field because they just don't have enough events under their belt that would have increased their strength of field number, which includes the OWGR and the FedEx number from last season, plus some other like small numbers that are included in this season's FedEx numbers. So keep that in mind. A lot of good rookies from that bucket. Your number one bucket, that 20 to 40 range, it's actually tied with 40 to 60. I think that's why the colors are a little bit off. Actually, the whole colors are off. I forgot to update them. My bad. These two buckets are identical. The projections are pretty identical. If you want a more confident bucket, it would be this one, the 20 to 40 range with course history, because there are 20 golfers in that bucket as opposed to 42 from the bucket below, and you can see the projections are nearly the same, but you have less to choose from these course history ones. And how about like the best course history you possibly can have? 1 to 20. There are currently 6 golfers in that bucket, and we're projecting somewhere between 0 to 2. So it's like a 16% chance this actually whiffs. But if we take a look at course history 3 golfers, it's a small list of golfers. So here you go. Choose 1, maybe 2. Maybe you go Berger Day or Spieth Day, or maybe you drop down to some of these guys. I don't mind Schwartzel, but he is coming from overseas. Who knows what that's going to play like? And also why they're colored this red color. They all have negative off the tee and negative putting stats. And that's for the entire last year. So not really high plays in my opinion. That kind of leads more to this, which again, remember the low projection is 0. There's a 16% chance this bucket doesn't hit. So if that sways you off of like a Daniel Berger or Jordan Spieth, if you're a single entry type of guy, I don't blame you. It makes sense to me. Yeah, and I'm not going to talk about the rest of the buckets because they're a little too large to talk about and would take too much time. We'll cover some of that in the strategy video tomorrow. Going to the recent form buckets. Now, I was kind of hesitant in adding this to the Farmers Insurance Open because there aren't a lot of events. Like if we go to the 2021 recent form page, we have 4 events in our belt, and I usually look at 7. You can see the tournament or the season started with the Tournament of Champions, and we only have 4 events to talk about. Now, I'm a proponent to have, like 50% of your field play at least 2 events in order to really look at recent form. I think we have that now. Most of our guys, I think, have around 3, if not, probably 2 at least. But what I was trying to get at is last week at the Farmers Insurance Open, every single bucket in the recent form stat hit 100% correct. So all the projections, I should say. So I think we could probably still be okay looking at recent form. I mean, obviously, if we were last week, we're going to be this week. It's pretty watered down. There isn't like a huge bucket. Now, having really good recent form coming into this actually looks really good. We're projecting somewhere between 1 to 4. And like there's a 10% chance that 2 doesn't hit for your minimum. But guess what? I find that to be pretty likely. So I know this says recent form 4. Don't worry about that. A lot of this just comes from the frequency that you see right here, right in this number. I kind of want to validate that. That seems pretty high. Oh no, recent form actually goes back as long as last year. Or last week buckets. Let's take a look. 111. Okay, perfect. That just seemed a lot. But you can see how watered down it is. A lot of them close to 20. I mean, sure, this one right here has way more, 29. That's your number one ranked bucket, but not when it comes to projections, because this is usually a volume-driven bucket. We actually have a little bit less than we typically do. Success rate isn't super high. Your best success rates come from recent form 4s and recent form 2s, and you can see both of those buckets we're projecting over 1, at least 1, maybe 2, maybe 3, and maybe 4, at least for this one. And then your recent form 1 buckets are that 40 to 60 range. So golfers with not very good recent form, but because it's kind of a higher volume with the success rate and the strength of field numbers, the projection is still somewhere between 1 to 3. So keep that in mind. And we could take a look at these two buckets because they're actually pretty small. So recent form 4s and recent form 2s. So your recent form 2s have Jason Day in it, McNeely. We talked about those guys already. And then you can see the rest of them. I probably like most of my 7K golfers in this bucket, if I'm being honest. But don't get me wrong, I also really like Mito. I really like McNeely, Jason Day. Probably not so much on Bezuidenhout. I do like Harmon. Probably not so much on McCarthy. But again, out of this bucket, you want somewhere between 1 to 2. So this is how you can limit your lineup building combinations, which is a huge thing. The way you can limit yourself from building lineups is actually awesome, because then you're more likely to build the perfect lineup that way, as opposed to have several options. So you can see you have 15 golfers to choose from. You can only choose a max of 2. So you could choose more than that. Don't get me wrong. Some the buckets aren't 100% correct, but they're 93% correct week in and week out. So go ahead, choose 2 of these guys confidently, and then move on. When we look at the other one, recent form 4s, we want somewhere between 1 to 5 recent form 4 golfers. 1 to 5. There are less golfers in this, or did I say 1 to 5? I meant to say 1 to 4. Sorry, 1 to 4. Yeah. And this is the likelihood they show up inside the top 10. So we could have Cantlay, Zalatoris, and Berger finish inside the top 10. That doesn't mean you can actually roster them. So we could have 5 or 4 golfers in this bucket, and it could look something like this. Could be those 5 golfers, or even these 4 golfers, or these 4 golfers. You can't roster all 4 of them. So if you think the likelihood of these guys finishing inside the top 10 are just that much higher than any of these, then choose one of these guys, and hopefully the guy you choose outperforms the other 2. Or you could start 11-10 or 10-10 and then go from there. Again, the minimum is actually 1.9. We could see only 1 golfer from this bucket finish inside the top 10. There's a possibility. It's 10% chance, like a 10% possibility in my opinion, but it can still happen. So keep that in mind. And then the rest of we already talked about the rest of the buckets, so we don't have to keep going on. Let's move to, probably should have started everything with the salaries. Yeah, we'll talk about salaries now and then end it with strokes gained. Like I said, in order to get an entry into the giveaway for the subscribers, give me your favorite 10K golfer, because we're projecting somewhere between 1 to 3 inside the top 10. So it's kind of piggybacks off of what we were just talking about with those 2 10K golfers, or those 3 10K golfers. 2 of them can finish inside the top 10 pretty easy. But now that you see this, we could have a max of 3 inside the top 10. Is it likely? Probably not. Is it likely we have 2? Yeah, but it's probably more likely we see 1 guy. I think it's 1 or 2. 1 or 2 inside the top 10. I'm pretty confident with that. Then we look at our 9K range, and you can see 1 to 3 inside the 9K range. Pretty high success rate here. And before I go any further, why does salary matter? Well, salary, takes into account basically the quality of player in every single field. DraftKings just doesn't give random salaries to people. A lot of it's based off of official World Golf Ranking. They also bake in course history stats, recent form stats. I don't know exactly what they bake in to their salary models, but most of the models I run pretty darn close to what DraftKings has. Maybe they're off just slightly, but again, DraftKings isn't just assigning weird salaries to people. Like Patrick Cantlay will never be in the 9K range in a field like this, you know, so keep that in mind. Salaries are important to look at, regardless of how arbitrary they are to you. This is definitely a careful piece that DraftKings considers. So 9K range, somewhere between 1 to 3. And there's a lot of good 9K golfers. I highly suggest you guys watch the Turn podcast that I did with Joe Nicely. We talked about these, about our favorite golfers in each of these tiers. The 8K range, not as strong. There's about a 20% chance that we see 0 finish inside the top 10. But more likely, we're going to see 1, at least 1. The 7K range is where it's really at. If you were watching the past optimal lineups, you saw a lot of 7Ks, like 4 7Ks in a lineup. You had a 10, a 9, 4 7s, or you saw 10, 9, 8, 7, 7, 6, or 7. We didn't see 7, 7, 7, but that's also in play as well. So be on the lookout for that. Try to include, you know, at least 2 7Ks in most of your lineups. If you're a single entry person, I would feel really confident doing 7. And I feel really confident going 10, 9, 7, 7. And depending on what you have left, maybe you put some more into the 9, or maybe you put 1 more in the 7 and put 1 into the 8. 10, 9, 8, 7, 7, 7, if you can do it that way. But I think those are your best lineup builds based off of salaries. And then the last one that we look at are strokes gained. I obviously do strokes gained a little bit differently. I use buckets instead. So we got to find 6 stat categories, or classes, I guess, 6 stat classes for strokes gained. And this is how it goes. Strokes gained 1, all positive strokes gained stats. Strokes gained 2, the only stats that are important are positive off the tee and positive putting, with 1 negative stat in between. Because obviously if there isn't a negative, they'd all be in here. And then we're looking at positive off the tee, negative putting with whatever in between, negative off the tee, positive putting with whatever in between. Again, the in between is your approach and around the green stats. Strokes gained 5, negative off the tee, negative putting, and then strokes gained 6, no strokes gained stats. And we see 9 golfers in that bucket. Just cross them off. The likelihood they finish inside the top 10, not good. But if we're looking at our best projected stats, strokes gained 1, all stats positive, somewhere between 1 to 3. And actually, the pretty equal stats are strokes gained 1, strokes gained 3, strokes gained 4. And then strokes gained 2 kind of comes in the rear. It looks like you want at least 1 of these, 1 of each. And guess what? This was the same we saw at the Farmers Insurance Open, where we saw 1 of each. And these are just looking at the entire last year's worth of data. This goes back to last year's AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. So if you got research tools on your own, just look at the last year of stats. I know a lot of those go back 50 rounds, 100 rounds, yada, yada, yada. But going back 1 full year is a pretty good sample size. I don't think it's too long to go back, and I don't think it's too short. I think it's really good. So take a look there. Look at all the stats that are on there. We want at least 1 of them. So yeah, 4 positions already filled by each of those strokes gained stats. And then you can just sprinkle in whatever else you want. There's always a chance. Remember, we're always rounding up in this bucket. So strokes gained 5 could actually see 2 golfers because it's 1.01. There's a 99% chance that doesn't happen, but there's a 1% chance it does. And then for these, I mean, there's a 91% chance we don't see a strokes gained 6 golfer with no strokes gained stats, but there's a 9% chance that it could happen. So keep all of that in mind when it comes to looking at strokes gained stats. And really, I have nothing else to add. We'll do a lot. We'll cover a little bit more in our strategy video, so be on the lookout for that. Yeah, this was all the pieces I think you needed to look at in order to take down an optimal lineup. And I get it. Optimal lineup is one of those very elusive things to get, but in my opinion, if you aim small, you're going to miss small. And again, to some, it's a fool's errand, but it's so much fun, right? Chasing the optimal lineup. If you ain't chasing the optimal lineup, I hope you're chasing a GPP winning lineup. And that's also baked into the things we just talked about. You can play safe. You can play a little risky. I'm showing you the way. I'm paving the way for you guys to build the optimal lineup. So hopefully you have some ideas of how to build lineups. And if not, join me tomorrow on the strategy video. We're going to go over all the golfers that I like. We'll build some lineups too. try to figure out the best combinations of putting some golfers together. So be on the lookout for that. I think that's it for me. So really appreciate you guys watching. Again, if you want to enter the giveaway for the subscriber giveaway, leave a comment down below. Obviously be subscribed. Give me your favorite 10K golfer and you'll be automatically entered into that giveaway. But I got nothing else for you. So thank you guys for watching. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we'll see you in the strategy video tomorrow. All right, bye.